Trump's tit-for-tat tariff conflict. We know that he has backed off, at least for 30 days, on the implementation of tariffs for Canada and Mexico. The ones against China, the punishing tariffs there, still on the table, also rattling the saber, threatening to impose punishing tariffs on the EU as well. Now, to talk about all of this is John Tamny. He is the president of Parkview Institute. John's also editor at RealClearMarkets. Welcome to the program, John.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Okay, I want to ask you, a weekend of concern and anxiety, and for the time being, no punishing tariffs on Mexico or Canada. Your thoughts on how we got here, and Mexico and Canada offering concessions to Trump?
Well, I wish what President Trump would do is say, we are bringing all American tariffs on foreign goods to zero, and that's going to grow our economy. So you other countries should follow suit unless you want to see your economies fall even further behind that of the United States. Sadly, that's not how Trump wants to negotiate. I do think this is a negotiating ploy for him. If he could get the tariffs that he's suggesting, it would be very damaging, obviously, to the U.S. economy, to the global economy, to Canada, right, Mexico, to China. So I'm hoping this is the beginning of a discussion.
Now, you recently wrote, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, let's call them what they are. Tariffs are tax hikes on working people in the United States. Elaborate a bit, if you would.
Well, that's exactly what they are. Why do Americans work? They work in order to get things. And so when you have less of the world able to meet the needs of the Americans or try to win their business, it means that Americans are paying more and more for the goods that they get. So tariffs are a direct tax on working people, on people of all working stripes. But the bigger tax with tariffs, of course, is that when you're not taking in the world's plenty, your people aren't doing the work most associated with their unique skills and intelligence. And so the worst aspect of tariffs is that it actually keeps Americans in jobs that they wouldn't otherwise have to do because we're not taking in the world's production in the first place.
Yeah, okay, so where do things stand with China? Trump saying tariffs against China could be, quote, very substantial. If it happens, how's China going to respond, and what is it going to do to people in the United States as well as the global economy?
Well, it's going to be devastating to the United States, precisely because it's going to be devastating to China. Let's never forget that the U.S. and China are very much economically integrated, and that's a beautiful thing. Apple, one of the most valuable companies in the world, sells about 1/5 of its iPhones in China. Tesla sells more cars in China than it does in North America. There are 7,000 Starbucks in China. There are 5,500 McDonald's in China on the way to 10,000. And so if we limit the ability of the Chinese to export to the United States, by definition, we're limiting the ability of the Chinese to buy American goods. And so if these tariffs were to go through, you'd see a very negative economic impact, and you'd see a very negative stock market impact. What we have to hope, however, is that this is a prelude to a negotiation. I don't know what, but we don't want the tariffs. We know that they would be damaging because by definition, trade among people is the greatest economic concept mankind has ever come up with. And let's add that it's the most peaceful concept that mankind has ever come up with.
Yeah, I'm curious. Trump has already gotten things that he wanted for both Mexico and Canada. Mexico is now going to send 10,000 more troops to the border in an effort to stop illegal drugs from going over, as well as keep migrants from crossing the border as well. And in the north, Canada promising that it's going to do everything it can to keep fentanyl from filtering through that area. My question, if Trump keeps getting these nibbles, what's going to stop him from continuing to rattle the saber? Okay, we're back, Canada and Mexico. We want more tariffs. We want more concessions from you.
It's a very good question. And I think what's going to stop him is, let's never forget that Trump ultimately judges his presidency and the economics of his presidency on how the stock market does. And let me be clear, I think that's a good thing. The stock market is an unbiased, non-ideological observer of how the economy is expected to do in the future. And so if Trump continues in this direction, if he continues to make it difficult to create uncertainty about the ability of producers to work together, that's going to very negatively reflect in the stock market. So far, it hasn't very much, because I think investors assume that this is a negotiation, that he's got a fallback from these grand grand pronunciations with tariffs that he can go back to. But if it's ever assumed that he's actually serious and wants to take this to 25%, you'd see a major, quite a massive stock market correction, and it's one that would discredit his presidency.
Okay, real quickly, John, what's the end game? What does the Trump administration hope to accomplish?
If you talk to people close to the Trump administration, what he ultimately hopes to accomplish is for other countries to reduce their tariffs on American goods. Let's never forget that they have barriers up to our production. If you go to China right now, and I love going to China, when you go, you can't use Facebook. So I think that's ultimately what he wants. He's using the tariff threat to get some concessions out of them, where he can come back to the American people and say, look, I negotiated this. I got you better trading deals with countries around the world.